We are at the October 2nd, 2024 Interstate Commission for EMS Personnel Practice, EMS Compact Commission meeting. I should say exec committee meeting. And I will call it to order and recognize Secretary House for roll call.
Thank you very much. I do see Commissioner Kenny, Commissioner Denny, Commissioner House, Commissioner Vandeloon online. Commissioner Schmieder is excused. Is Commissioner Kaler?
Thank you. As a reminder, we do encourage public attendance, so we usually have a lot more than just the executive committee, and we're always appreciative of that, whether they're commissioners or people, the general public. We do ask if you have comments or questions during the meeting, use the raise hand feature and I will recognize you. If you are recognized, please identify your name and what organization you're representing. And then we will allow you to speak generally for 2 minutes or less. If there's disruptive noise, behavior, otherwise, then our executive director may mute you at his discretion. With that, I will open it up to, is there any public comment for matters not listed on the agenda? Any matters not on the agenda from either exec committee members, fellow commissioners, or the public? If you would like to say something, please use the raise hand feature. And Commissioner Bateman.
And Chairman, just for the record, I see Commissioner Kohler has joined for the record.
Thank you.
Sorry with that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kohler is here, and then recognize Commissioner Bateman for comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief update for the executive committee. We have an individual operating in our state impersonating law enforcement and EMS personnel. Apparently, he's also operating in or has operated in Oklahoma and in Montana. I was in communication with Commissioner Hochmeyer from Oklahoma about this individual. He's also faked a certification from the IBSC for critical care paramedic. I've been in touch with their office as well. So just wanted to give you an update that that is happening in our states. We are aware, and I'll be entering a speed memo into the NEMSCA database for other member states.
Thank you, Commissioner Bateman. Sorry to hear that. We never like that reflecting poorly on the profession, but it sounds like you guys are on top of it. Appreciate you getting the word out. Any questions, comments related to Commissioner Bateman's comment? Any additional public comments that are out there? Okay, we will move on. I've not seen any old business, so we will go into reports, and we'll start with Commissioner Vandeloon for Treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Treasurer's report is as follows. The previous balance was $96,546.54. We had 2 debits of $6,425, leaving us, we don't have any credits last month, and our pending balance is $83,696.54. And I'll take any questions if you have any.
Any commission and any questions for our treasurer? Okay, we will go ahead and accept that report as submitted. And we will go over to Commissioner House for meeting summary.
I believe the meeting summary was within our packet as well, or within our book there. And so I think we had a nice speedy turnaround on that, guys. I did not receive any type of comments back as to additions that need to be made. So that's available for our summary. And then, of course, the audio is our official recording side of things.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to accept this as our summary for posting on the website.
This is Commissioner Kaler. I will motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Kaler.
Commissioner Denny, I'll second.
And Commissioner Denny with the second. Any further comments? I guess I should add any clarifications or otherwise on it. Any objections to the motion? Any abstentions? Okay, we will accept it as our summary, and our executive director may post it on the website. Turn over to our chair's report is fairly brief. I do want to commend Donnie. He's been doing a great job as always on advocacy. He and I crossed paths several times, as I'm sure he's going to report on at EMS Expo. But he also was here in Indiana, gave an excellent overview of the compact and kind of worked towards persuading states why they should be engaged in it. And so that is the major things that I have. We did have a question that we were trying to, on a reimbursement type question on travel. And so Donnie quickly since Commissioner Speeder is not available for an update from bylaws and rules.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I do note that Commissioner Hockmeyer put a note in the chat. I wanted to yield real quick if you wanted to mention that on the record.
Yes, I'll recognize Commissioner Hockmeyer.
Okay, thank you. I was having trouble getting my hand to raise for some reason, but yeah, we've received two complaints regarding the individual that Commissioner Bateman recognized, and we're happy to assist if any further problems surface. And I do want to point out that one of the things he was doing was saying he had a Oklahoma critical care paramedic license, and we don't offer critical care in Oklahoma, so that should be an immediate red flag for anybody who's receiving anything suggesting that it's Oklahoma critical care.
Thank you for adding that information. That's important. Thank you for attending today, Commissioner Hockmeyer. Okay. Back to you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Schmieder had a last minute conflict, and so in his stead, I'll just provide an update on the Bylaws and Rules Committee. They've been meeting frequently, and I think I've just done some yeoman work on creating some conceptual administrative rules, or an update to the conceptual rules. These are included in the packet. I want to note, just to make sure we're very clear, we're aiming for a February 2025 hearing and introduction of these rules. So we are way in advance of that. That means there's significant time for these rules to be reviewed. This is a conceptual draft. This is not the final draft of these rules. And in fact, the process that the committee took is to look at the concepts that we wanted to modify and change, get that in writing, and now we've turned these over to our legal counsel for their review. So these conceptual rules are pre-review of counsel. Counsel is going to be looking over them this month and then come back, and then it'll be working back through the committee for another 1 or 2 months. And we anticipate that by end of November, early December, we should have a final or close to final draft that's out there. I'll just highlight a few things in these. They're available on the website as well. Just to draw your attention to, we did some cleanup of definitions. We incorporated the phraseology EMS clinician, just because that is a phrase that seems to be more commonly used now in the profession, and this committee voted earlier to kind of recognize that as an official phraseology when referring to personnel. We did start looking at the remote state appropriate authority. That's been something that's been a question for some time. The EMS privilege to practice, we did incorporate a professional code of conduct reference. Now, for those on the call might be saying, well, wait a second, that's not been approved. Correct. That is up for adoption October 16th. So we are hoping and anticipating that that will be approved as a professional code of conduct by the commission. And if so, we anticipate incorporating that as a reference to professional code of conduct in these administrative rules. So that's why that's in there now. There's a lot of things here you can look at, but essentially under the code of conduct, it really does draw out the fact that there is a clear expectation that anyone operating under the privilege to practice would follow the professional code of conduct, and it would be an accountability mechanism back to the states related to that. Moving on down through, the next major section to draw your attention to is going to be related to the coordinated database. There's a lot of red in this. The coordinated database, this involves a pretty significant overhaul, and it involves new definitions to segment out 4 types of data ownership that we've identified. Member state data, meaning data that the compact member states submit. Derived data, which is data that is generated from that. So it's not primary source data, but it's derived. So for instance, how many EMS personnel have a privilege to practice? That's an example of derived data. It's where we take all state data, combine it, and we have a new set of data, derived data. Next is compact data. That's data explicitly generated by and owned by the compact. A simple example of this would be logins, administrators. Who are the compact commissioners? That's an example of compact data. Also, privilege to practice overall status. While individual states set the privilege to practice flag, as you know, there's logic that goes into place that generates the overall privilege to practice status. That's an example of compact data. And then finally, third-party data. Third-party data currently includes National Registry data, United States Postal Service data, but it can also include potentially in the future types of data submitted by non-compact member states. So for instance, a non-compact state might be able to submit licensure data. And so this kind of paves the way for that in the future. There is some clarification under access control, and it tightens that up a little bit more. It defines out explicitly types of access, governmental body access, public access. We do recognize that the public does have access to validate data now. For instance, on the website, the public can validate an EMS practitioner's license information and privilege to practice. This actually just adds more clarification around that. How do we protect that data, et cetera. And then finally, employer access. As the EMS committee that I would is the administrative rules will set the foundation for what technology can be developed. And so while, for instance, employer access is there and it anticipates the ability for an employer to validate an entire roster, the technology for that has not been created. We did not want to get into a situation where we invest in creating technology that is not supported by appropriate administrative rule or the will of the commission. So this ensures that the administrative rules are in place, the will of the commission is very clear, and then the technology can be developed after that. So these are available. They're up on the website. They will be circulated. We will have a number of opportunities for public comment, for public input, for hearings. But that represents many months of work by this committee.
I will reiterate what Donnie said, a lot of great work, very good quality discussions. I know we have a few commissioners on here participate in that committee. I usually try to participate as well, and it's been a very productive session. So any questions that you have for our executive director regarding the rules and bylaws? Okay, we will move on to work group updates. Is there anything additional for the ethics work group?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chair.
There would be, but I wanted to check. Any updates on the the data privacy work group? If that'd be you or Commissioner Bateman?
I'll yield to Commissioner Bateman.
Thank you, Donnie and Mr. Chair, and feel free, Donnie, to supplement any additional information. So the data protection work group did not meet last month due to a number of scheduling conflicts. However, Donnie and I did meet with the National Security Division of the Department of Justice regarding federal initiatives around data privacy and protection. It was very informational meeting for me, and we'll bring some of that information to the next work group meeting, which I believe is next week. And then I'm in the process of drafting some thoughts for recommendations from that work group to the commission. And so we'll review those at the next meeting as well.
Yeah, I think the only thing I might add to that, Mr. Chair, is the protection of EMS licensure data is a very important, significant issue. Our partners at the Department of Justice enthusiastically validated the work that we were doing. There is a series of presidential executive orders that will be addressing bulk data, and particularly how do we protect bulk data of sensitive bulk data from adversaries and cyber criminals and nation states actually that are looking for that. There will be some federal rules that are out for public comment probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We've been encouraged as a governmental body to carefully review those and ensure that the protection of EMS data is front and center in that. And so I anticipate that we'll have a quick turnaround on providing some official guidance back in a government to government fashion on that. It's very important. The one thing I would raise for the commissioners online and for the states is that we do have a channel that's open. If you receive a public information request that's asking for bulk data of your entire licensure data set, I would encourage you to reach out to my office. We can collaborate and coordinate with the FBI and with others to ensure that, one, it's a legit request, to make sure that the requestor is not from a nation state adversarial place and that it's not being used for nefarious purposes. We certainly want to encourage states to limit the distribution of licensure data to the extent that's possible, but reach out to our office in the meantime before we get administrative rules and drafts out.
Any questions or comments related to the data privacy, where they are and where we're headed? Okay, thank you both for that update. Appreciate that. I believe we're up to Donnie for his executive director's report.
Yeah, thank you. So first off is, yes, EMS World Expo. That was a good opportunity. Had the opportunity to present there representing the compact as well and interact with a lot of people. We talked about regulation, and we worked with the National EMS Leadership Forum, and also had a number of just side conversations with stakeholders. So that was a really good opportunity. One of the things that was discussed is the participating with some of our stakeholder partners and some of the associations in a joint booth at a national conference next year. And so this was circulated by email, and I just am reporting back that we did confirm that we will participate. And a special thanks out to the NAEMT for coordinating this. Essentially, this would be an opportunity for us to interact with legislators and state government officials on a national level and bring awareness to EMS as a whole and also for the EMS Compact. And that's later in 2025. It just required some advanced planning for that. It is a busy travel time, as you may have heard in the before we officially started. I just returned back an hour or so ago from Indianapolis for the Great Lakes region of the NASIMSO meeting with state officials. I was able to do about an hour presentation there on the compact and an overview of compacts and really kind of the importance that compacts have related to licensure, not just EMS licensure, but healthcare and occupational licensure. I've been invited to the South Region Conference in Florida, and so I'll be going there in early November to participate in that. Also, with the National Registry, was invited to participate in a new state director orientation meeting that was earlier in the week and in Columbus, Ohio, and had the opportunity to interact with some new state officials there and provide updates and guidance from the compact at that meeting. On this weekend, I go to Washington, D.C. and Emmitsburg to the National Fire Academy, and will be participating in the National Fire Academy and U.S. Fire Administration Summit. And this will be fire and EMS and governmental leaders from around the nation, and we'll be fully participating there and also having a lot of conversations with both our federal and local partners on the role of the EMS Compact and the future of the compact. And so that's a very important meeting coming up. So lots of travel, lots going on. I've done a number of updates to our website. You may have seen some press releases. I was able to, grateful to the National Registry. They did a podcast related to the EMS Compact. It was a sit-down conversation with their executive director, Bill Seifert, and myself. And I'm told that that's had something over 30,000 views. So a very significant outreach from that. The EMS podcast with Chief Randall, and that was one a few weeks ago with Commissioner Kenny and myself. That's also received a lot of views as well. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of advocacy. I'm beginning to work with states on the upcoming legislative session and ensuring that interested states have the resources and the information that they need. One thing I'll point out is we continue to work on some, incorrect information or false information out there. So we continue to address that. Two things of note. One is that there's still some misunderstanding and confusion about our status. And so we're trying to make sure that we are very clear and communicate that we are a governmental body. In fact, as a compact commission, quite a powerful governmental body in the organization structure of that. There's some misinformation that we are an association or a nonprofit or a private group. Obviously, that's not the case. So we're continuing to get that information out. Indeed, a governmental body, and not only a governmental body, we are the highest regulatory governmental body for EMS in the United States. And so for EMS personnel, and focused on the interstate practice of EMS personnel. The other thing that's out there is some misinformation related to funding and finances. There continues to be some misinformation circulated that we levy large costs back to member states. Obviously, as commissioners, all of you know, and I'm just clarifying for the record, while the commission does have statutory authority, as with every other governmental entity, to levy fees back to states, one, that has never been done. The commission has never charged and has never levied a fee to states, and states have never paid a fee in nearly 10 years since the legislation was drafted. So just being very clear on the record, there's never been a charge to a state. And the only way there would be a charge for the state is if all the state commissioners actually voted and ratified to levy that charge. And I'm very confident that that's not happening anytime soon. The states are not doing that. We do have very secure funding, and that's not been passed on to either individuals or states. So we're very grateful for that. So we're continuing to do advocacy and education and raise awareness about the compact. I'm happy to stand for any questions or feedback from anyone, Mr. Chair.
Questions or feedback for Donnie?
Hey, Donnie, and it's Joe. In that same realm of misinformation going out there, I am hearing a rumor from our air medical side that our eastern states within the compact are stating that there is a time requirement. Although every time I've asked at which states, I've never been given the listing of them. But if you're hearing that rumbling, I'm working fairly hard on the air medical side to try to get them to identify who and where. But as of right now, there is no time requirement. Is my understanding. It's you're granted access and go. So
That's correct, sir. I've heard occasional rumblings of that. I've not been able to track that down. And we'll continue to work with that. I'll continue to work with the partners as well on that, and our commissioners. In that realm, Mr. Chair, I probably have two more updates I should acknowledge. One is on October 10th, we are doing an education training session, and it's limited to state officials. So a .gov email is required, but this is a training session for state executive branch officials. We currently have about 150 RSVP'd to this, and during that, we'll be going over the legislation, the law, how the EMS compact works, the coordinated database, etc. And so hopefully that's a good opportunity for state officials to clarify and get trained on the operations of the compact. We will have the Council of State Government as a guest, and they'll be doing a presentation on occupational compacts in general. So Commissioner House, hopefully that will help with our training of the hundreds of executive branch staff that interact with the compact, and maybe that will help on this. And then, Mr. Chair, either now or later, I do have an update on one of the requests from the EC in the last meeting. That was a implementation status, and I do have some updates on where states are at in implementing the compact.
Yes, I think you can go ahead and go on that.
Sure. And what I'll do is I'll just scroll down in the EC book, and for the commissioners, your copy of this book has an addendum. I've not publicly released this because it's still very much draft, but I will go and show, for instance, the Colorado compliance. So for every compact state, we do have a compliance report, and so I've requested commissioners to validate this by close of business today. We will have the final report available to the public for the October 16th meeting. But the report essentially looks like this. And so it shows each state, excuse me, it shows when they joined the compact, and that is the date that the law was enacted, the current commissioner, and then it goes across a number of things that's required by the legislation. So the first is pretty straightforward, and that is the legislation is enacted. You can't be a part of the compact unless you have the legislation enacted. The next is ensuring that there is a commissioner appointed, and that commissioner has to be appointed by the governor or a governor designee. And so this shows the compliance of that. And I'm happy to report that all compact states both have the legislation that initial licensure can only be granted when someone has National Registry certification. That's not required for research. That's not required for ongoing. And we also have a provision of grandfathering people in who was licensed before the state became part of the compact. Currently, all states are compliant in that area. The next area is the coordinated database integration. We have most states compliant. We have a number of states working on this. And I believe in our National Registry report, they will provide some updates, but they've been working diligently with states to assist states that are not compliant in this area. Discipline reporting is one area that I did learn some things on. We had a number of states that through changing of personnel or attrition was not aware of how to enter discipline into the coordinated database. And so we've been doing some technical assistance for states on that. Biometric background checks, and I'm very happy to report that Indiana has recently turned that on. So not to take your thunder there, Craig, but we are seeing an uptick on that. And the mandate for that is coming up here in a few months for all states. And then finally is expedited veteran processing. This is an area that there was some confusion amongst compact states. And just for awareness, the legislation, the compact legislation does state that all compact states will have a process to identify and expedite veteran processing. And so that is part of the law. And so I've been providing technical assistance to states. Some states had this already implemented. Some states, essentially, it's a non-issue because due to electronic license processing, the moment a qualified application is submitted, in many states, it's processed the same day. However, we are working with states to make sure that they do have a policy in place and that their staff are trained and that they are in adherence with the law. So that's been an area of some technical assistance and education. I did put out a sample policy for states that a number of states have adopted in the past couple of weeks, just to ensure that their paperwork matches their process and that they can report that they are compliant with the law. So this complete report will be finalized for the October meeting and will be published on our website as well, showing the current status of all states. And happy to stand for any questions on this, and that concludes my executive director report.
Thank you. Any questions? I would note, and I discussed with Donnie our status, and I think he did a good job of capturing what was some of the concerns. And I don't think this is the end all. He has worked on that, and we'll review it and see what types of actions we can take from there. But yeah, definitely is a good collection of everything. Okay. I believe we are ready for the NIMSKID update, and I recognize Ray for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, everybody. The report in front of you, not a lot of change, kind of tagging off of Donnie's last demo of the status reports, compliance. I plan to, and I sent Donnie a draft of really an onboarding report to send out to each of the states that are still in some degree of onboarding with NEMSKID. And the intent is to basically summarize where we are, how we've gotten to where we are today, and ensure that we have the correct points of contact and offer up assistance to getting them on board, or at least developing a plan with some more solid dates as to how we get to complete compliance as far as NEMSKID is concerned. So other than that, one last thing, the left column, we are now in Q4 of 2024. So I had initial meeting with projects for NEMSKID to prioritize the work that will be done here in the coming months. The EMS ID as a primary identifier is the number one. Probably number two is to bring a little bit of admin functionality that we lack, something that probably should have been in the initial build, but it deals with creating new accounts and deactivating for those people that are no longer that shouldn't have access to the system. Currently, we have to change their password and just don't tell them so that they don't have access. So we hope to bring on keep those two things yet this year sometime, hopefully in the next month or two. And then in the 2025 Q1, start on the reporting functionality. That's the next priority. Barring any questions, that's all I have for today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. As always, we appreciate the details. Any questions or comments related to NIMSCID report? Seeing none, we will move on to the new business. The first item I referenced a little bit in my report, Donnie had submitted some travel, and traditionally, for the most part, it's been reimbursement after the fact, and he had some cost for future travel where he could save money by purchasing, and I did approve them. I consulted with Brad and made sure, and we did approve it because we agreed with the cost savings. I just noted in some areas you sometimes have to complete the travel first, then get reimbursed. And so I kind of mentioned that to Donnie, and we had a little side discussion. And as his usual pattern, he's like, well, let me see what I can work up. And he has worked up something for us here. So I will turn it over to him.
Yeah, thank you so much. As Commissioner Tenney noted, the traditional has been a 30-day cycle of I do the purchase the airline tickets or prepay any registration fees and then submit. With the uptick in travel and with the uptick in planned travel, so for instance, travel that's greater than 30 days out, obviously there's a cost savings to the commission if we buy airline tickets as soon as practical, and same things with registration fees. And essentially carrying that personally on a credit card for 60, 90, 120 days was something that I wanted to be addressed. So this is just a expense reimbursement policy. It both addresses routine 30-day or less. It also acknowledges the occasion where advanced travel is needed. And as any of us who travel for government and work knows that, occasionally trips can change. And this outlines a process for that. If a trip changes, I'll notify the chair. Any travel credits will be recorded and will be applied as a credit or essentially deducted from my next travel or my next expense report. Excuse me. So this is the policy. It's in the public board book, and I would either request a review or an adoption of this, that we can just formalize the process and put this in our policies and procedures.
Thank you, Donnie. And from my perspective, when I read it after he shot it back, I feel like everything's spot on. I do note if we had a larger organization, it might be challenging to track, does he have a credit? First of all, Donnie has an exemplary record of making the commitments. I don't recall him backing out, other than occasionally maybe something is canceled, which is beyond his control. But I believe it's something that is trackable by the chairperson and potentially the treasurer. So I believe that this is a solid policy proposal, and I believe it is enforceable, and it can be achievable as well and meet the needs. So I'm open to questions, comments, or any motions.
Mr. Chair, this is Chairman Denny from Idaho. I'd move that we approve the policy. I read through it, reviewed it, and I think it's sound.
Thank you. A motion to approve that as a policy from Commissioner Denny.
Second.
Second from Commissioner House. Any further discussion on it? Any objections to adopting the policy from the executive committee? Any abstentions from the executive committee? We will show the policy approved. Thank you for your work on that, Donnie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we are up to an initiative that Donnie is bringing before us, which warrants discussion and serious consideration, and that is on advisory committees. So I will recognize him again.
Hey, thank you so much. So in our enabling legislation, section 10.11, and it states that the commission is authorized. It doesn't say the commission shall, but the commission is authorized to appoint committees, including advisory committees. And it lays out what these committees could include. As we continue to gain very significant momentum, and as we continue to grow as a compact and as a governmental body, we enjoy really good working relationships with both our stakeholder community, with associations, and with our federal partners. However, I believe that this is probably the time for us to establish one, if not two, official advisory committees. And while I note that every public meeting that we hold, we provide opportunity for stakeholder feedback and even for federal partner feedback, we might be better served to stand up a very specific advisory committee for that. So what I am requesting for consideration is two advisory committees. One is a stakeholder advisory committee. And this stakeholder advisory committee, and you can see the list that I put there, this would be an initial list. I believe that it would be best served to probably have a voting membership in addition to having it be an open committee, as all of our committee meetings are. But this is looking at the associations that were involved with creating the compact and initially advising. But this would be a group that would get together at least 2 times per year. I would request that a commissioner be the chair of this committee. And this would be an opportunity to discuss everything ranging from implementation, challenges, opportunities for growth, education, how we operationalize the compact, and any blind spots that we may not have or may not have awareness of. And then this could be formalized into a report that could be presented both to the EC and the commission. So I will take a pause here real quick before I go to the second one for any conversation on this one.
Thank you. One question I did have, am I incorrect? But I think several of these listed as stakeholders were also people that helped with the early formation of the compact replica language. Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, many of these are actually drafters of the very legislation.
I think that's important to note. Open to any comments. The only thing I would suggest is if we end up adopting it soon, then consider maybe just that the compact chairperson designates the chairperson of the committee. And then that way it makes it more agile so that if there's an opening or otherwise, but I'm open to who chairs it. I did tell Donnie on both these, probably, I think we have gained traction. I know he hasn't presented the second one, which would be our kind of federal partners. But I think on both these, we have a lot of interest, and there are sometimes even needs for clarification. And I view it as a two-way street. One, they can give us feedback on areas we can improve, but I think it also is an education piece. So I said, I can't guarantee. I even asked him directly, what do you think the attendance will be and participation, to sign up for another advisory group? And he said, well, hopefully good. We're kind of capturing fire right now. But I said, I feel like even if we reached a few, it is a positive thing, but that's my stance on it. Okay, Donnie, do you want to go ahead and move on to the second one? And then if we
Yep.
don't have anything on that, then we'll.
We can do that. Absolutely. The next is a federal advisory committee, and this would be exclusive to our federal partners. It's important to note, just for history, this compact was originated directly out of the Department of Homeland Security. I do interface with them on a very regular basis. Also, the Department of Defense. In fact, the Department of Defense has stood up many of the other occupational licensing compacts and are very, very involved in occupational licensing compacts. But in addition to that, have very regular and routine interactions with everyone on this list. And this would provide an opportunity to just get together, see if they have any input, see if they have any concerns. We do note that thousands and upon thousands, tens of thousands of EMS clinicians are part of our federal workforce. And this was initially envisioned as a way to help our federal EMS workforce ensure compliance with state regulations as they work in multiple states. So this would be an opportunity for that. It would also be an opportunity for us to identify any opportunities for further collaboration as a government regulatory body as well. So it'd be a bi-directional opportunity there for collaboration, implementation, support, and government to government advocacy.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this one or the earlier one? Commissioner House.
Yeah, thank you. And I think both of these are great ideas and heading forward. So you got my full support on both. My question comes down to timing. Would this be something that would be great to take to the full commission here in a couple weeks to say, hey, let's present? I don't think we're planning on convening either one of these between now and then. So I'm not sure that I would see any harm in us taking it just to the full commission, since this really is a full commission thing. But again, I think if you're looking for support from the executive committee, it's a whole different thing. But I think this is a great idea and something that needs to be done.
Thank you, Commissioner House. Other comments? Commissioner House, I find your proposal logical. And so I wonder if you would want to make a motion to support, but send it on to the commission for full consideration.
I would be happy to make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner House with the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Commissioner Denny from Idaho.
Thank you, Commissioner Denny with the second. Any further comments or discussion on this topic? Any against the motion to send this to the full commission with our recommendation? And any abstentions? Okay, we will proceed in that manner.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I think we're up to the actual meeting, other than we just added to your agenda if it wasn't on there, so you can proceed ahead.
Thank you. This is just an overview of the 2024 Q4 meeting agenda. This has been duly public noticed. It was public noticed well in advance. And so a few highlights of this. We do have two special presentations at this upcoming commission meeting. The first is an introduction to patient safety organizations and the intersection with EMS, and that's with the Center for Patient Safety. And this is with Dan Burke. Many of you probably recognize that name. He was recently the state EMS director representing the District of Columbia. And he has moved to this new Center for Patient Safety, which is a patient safety organization. Just for the EC's awareness, as you are aware, in our legislative mandate, one of our legislative mandates is to increase safety, and the legislation says especially patient safety. So I do think that there is an opportunity for us as a commission to look at ways that we can improve patient safety, and the Center for Patient Safety certainly is doing some very focused work in that. So Mr. Burke will provide an overview of that organization, and I see this probably as a foundation for future opportunities that the commission can identify ways to really improve how we report near-miss incidences as a nation and as an industry, and how we can make informed recommendations to advance our profession. The second is probably a little bit more of a unique opportunity, and this is an introduction to Waymo and autonomous vehicles. And this is Waymo, as you may know, is it's owned by Alphabet, which is the owner of Google, but it is an autonomous driverless vehicle that is fully operational in a number of cities in the United States, and they are expanding their footprint. However, the concept of driverless vehicles is still relatively new, but as an EMS workforce, we will not only have the potential immediately, but certainly in the future to increase the interaction between EMS and autonomous vehicles. What does that interaction look like? What does EMS personnel do if they encounter a vehicle that literally has no driver in it on a public highway? What resources are out there? How do we educate our workforce? And then in the future, what are regulatory implementation, regulatory considerations in the future? And this could potentially extend to a future 5 or 10 years down the road, where the concept of autonomous ambulances might be something that regulators have to consider. Or what is the impact of autonomous vehicles on patient transport? Would EMS ever utilize an autonomous vehicle? So the Waymo will be providing an overview of autonomous vehicles to us. They will provide contact information for EMS workforce on how do you contact their emergency response office if you have an interaction. So that is a forward-looking overview of autonomous vehicles for the commission. Everything else is relatively standard for this upcoming meeting. We will have a consideration of the code of conduct that we talked about earlier, and then the election of officers at the end of the meeting. So that's the overview. I'm happy to stand for any questions on the agenda that's been public noticed and is available.
Donnie, what kind of time frame did you give our presenters?
10 minutes each.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner House, where do we stand with the election slate?
It's a really good question. So far, I've only had interest from the 3 incumbents. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So still open. People can. I hadn't heard of anyone else, but the floor is open if there are others interested, chairperson, treasurer, or member at large. And we are all 3 on here, but willing to serve as well. Any questions, comments on the agenda as proposed for this meeting? It sounds like a good meeting. We got some great overviews, and then we will tackle looking at that rule, and then on the code of conduct, I should say, not the rule, the code of conduct, and then go into elections. Okay, seeing no comments, partner updates. See Dia is on here from the SIMSO, so just we saw her at the Great Lakes region as well, but we'll see what she has to add. Or she's on a flight.
Yeah. You may not have access to audio.
There she comes.
Or you can revoke my mute certification. Nothing at this time, Mr. Chairman, although earlier today we did confirm we're reserving the usual Wednesday slot for the commission if it chooses to meet in conjunction with our annual meeting in Grand Rapids the week of May 12, 2025. We'll continue to reserve that unless we hear differently from the commission.
And we did look at the calendar dates, and yes, that is on our calendar dates for next year. So we appreciate you allowing us to meet on site. Okay, other federal partners or that would like to do an update, use the raise hand feature. Don't know if I see any. Any further last minutes before we call for an adjournment? Okay, I will show us adjourned. Thank you everyone for being here, and hopefully we will see you coming up next week, October 9th, for the full commission meeting. And then we'll be back here for executive committee on November 6th. Thank you, everyone.